The working vacuum gauge. This gauge was developed originally to test whether or not your vacuum could handle a TurboCat, that it had the suction and the airflow combination to do that with its 5/8 inch opening over here. This has confused a few YouTubers and a few people watching over the years, so I wanted to clarify it. I did have an older video on this, but it's a lot of me and my friend Reggie talking back and forth, which seemed to confuse a lot of people. So, when you have an air-driven head with no electricity, you need to know whether or not your vacuum can power it. And on the working vacuum gauge, that number is 45 is the magic number we're looking for of working vacuum. That means not having your hand covered, just what it naturally pulls out of this apparatus. Now that has seemed to confuse people, but that has also set the industry standard of 45 inches of working vacuum is what constitutes a good or a powerful vacuum. And we can see this over and over again as I've tested more vacuums than I can count with this sort of gauge. It also allows me to test sealed vacuum as well, which is really useful for knowing the maximum number of potential suction that a machine can pull. Now, the closer the working vacuum number is to its sealed number, the better the airflow of the machine and the more efficient that the airflow path is. So when I test something like a Kirby, and you see it has a low working vacuum, but its sealed vacuum and its working vacuum are very close, that's a good indication that the machine has an efficient airflow path, at least without the nozzle. Now, I see some people who test CFM. That's an important metric. Is it as important as this? Not in my experience. I find this to be a far better tell whether or not a machine is powerful than CFM, though knowing the sealed vacuum and CFM can give you a great idea whether or not it's a powerful vacuum. There are at least raw numbers you can look at. The average consumer, though, or the average person is not going to know what these are, and it's going to get very confusing. You also see things like air watts, which there are two different ways to calculate air watts. So whoever knows which way you did the math on that. So I generally consider air watts to be a bad measurement. And then you see companies who tote, oh, we have 200 or 300 air watts. Well, if you calculate the number like, let's say MD does for an example of math, that means your machine is not very powerful. So again, that gets real confusing. I'm not going to get into airflow boxes today. That's a subject of another video, but basically I see it done wrong 90% of the time. If you see somebody with a square airflow box, they're doing it wrong. Disregard those numbers. So let's go and test my central vac, and I'll give you an idea, working vacuum. So here's my central vacuum outlet. Let's see how much working vacuum it has and sealed vacuum. So the sealed number, very high. And we can see my working vacuum right there. About 70, 75. So very good numbers from my central vacuum as well. You'll have to excuse the bad lighting. The sun is going down. Let's take a look at something like the Dyson V11 and see what kind of numbers it gets in high for working vacuum. As you can see, it gets 60 inches sealed and about 19 working, meaning this does not have enough power for a turbo or really to do anything else practical. I wanted to show you this clip from one of the machines that surprised me the most, which was this Hoover Max, or the Hoover Tempo in its latest iteration. So this shows that even some of the cheap vacuums do work well. I also test this Miele vacuum in the same clip as well. So this is an older generation Miele to give you an idea of what they get. And then the next one I'm going to do is the Kirby. Look at these numbers compared to the Hoover. You can see that the Hoover really is quite impressive considering it cost about a tenth or less than these two machines here. Another strange example of working vacuum, I believe, was the LG A9, where through testing we were able to determine that it had two low power settings, that it didn't actually have a true medium. Very, very strange that they did that, and you can see it hardly has any working vacuum there, and all of a sudden it shoots way up into ridiculous numbers for cordless vacuums. And this is another one that really surprised me, so I wanted to include this clip as well. I ended up checking these numbers twice with two different gauges and sending LG an email to confirm that the sealed vacuum was as high as I tested. This truly was a pleasant surprise. So even though my Zero G has an electric nozzle, let's see if it has enough working vacuum to power a TurboCat. Just over 40. Should work. Not ideal, but it should work. And it does work. It is powering the unit. And you can see it's spinning that TurboCat very efficiently, and it doesn't stop. It slows down a little, but doesn't stop. Exactly as it should. So we can conclude from that the Zero G is a powerful vacuum. Now if we test its sealed number, you can see that's very high. It's about 90. But that doesn't tell me whether or not the sealed number will power a TurboCat or clean efficiently. And that's where the working vacuum comes into play. If you're interested in obtaining a working vacuum gauge, you can go to a Central Vac dealer and try to order one. Some will order them for you, some will not. These are hand-assembled by VacuFlow is where this one came from. I took the liberty to glue it in place so the gauge isn't always falling out. It gives me more consistent results. You can build one of these. You can buy this suction gauge from numerous wholesale suppliers. You can get bent over and buy them on eBay if you really are desperate and assemble the pipe. Trying to get the washer with this size fitting does require drilling through hard steel, so take that for what it's worth. I do also have them for sale on our Patreon page, where I'm basically just assembling them for you on my Patreon page. So if you want one, I'm happy to send you one. Usually it takes 4 to 6 weeks for me to make one and send it out by the time I get all the materials and stuff. I hope this explained working vacuum and why I test in this industry standard. Please thumbs up, comment below, and have yourself a wonderful day.